Hey, I'm not Howie. So you're hanging with Howie, but Howie's not here tonight. He's doing something else that he had to take care of. So you're going to be hanging with me, Jay, along with this fine group of DJs. But before we get into introductions and our topic for tonight, I want to make sure I mention our main sponsor here. It's DJ Event Planner. Down in the description, you're going to see links to all of our great sponsors. We have a lot of them. So by the time this is airing and you're watching it, just look down below in the description and you'll see links that will take you right there. So we have a good house tonight. We've got a lot of DJs from all over the place. So I'm going to go around the clock in my direction. So we've got Ken over here to start with, along with Ken, Mr. John Colley. We've got Buddy. And in the middle of my screen, we've got Eric from New Hampshire. And of course, John is a road dog, if you know what that means.
Oh, road dog. It's been a while.
Mm-hmm. Man. You can tell who's driving this bus. All right. So what I wanted to talk to everyone about tonight was speakers. We all use speakers. We use different types of speakers. And I'm just curious, what made you kind of get the speakers you have? Is there a particular, type of event that you use those speakers for? So just to start the ball rolling, I use an array style. Excuse me, an array style. I love them for weddings. 99% of my events are under 200 people. I feel that the arrays I use really cover things well. I also have box speakers I use for satellites and ceremonies. I always use a 10-inch box for a ceremony. It's just what I've always done. I always project from the back of the room, so I'm coming behind people's heads so they get sound coming kind of in both ways. Most of my events, a lot of you may know I'm in Southern California, and since COVID, I'm outside most of the time, and the majority, high 90 percentile of events, do not allow for subwoofers. So I find arrays cover a lot of ground in that respect with some good bass on the pickup, especially if you've got an app and you can switch to from music to club or live or whatever your system is. But once I get into other types of events, school events, quinceanera, bar mitzvahs, I tend to run boxes because I tend to run subs. Usually one sub under the table, two tops, and for even bigger events, two subs under the table, two tops to really push the air. So let's go around. Ken, what kind of speakers are you using for what kind of events and why?
I mainly do dances.
Okay.
So usually two boxes and one sub, mainly.
Okay. And so you'd use that for really any event that comes your way for now?
Yeah.
Good for you. Okay. I'm just curious, what size tops and sub are you using?
15s.
Wow. Okay. Same on the sub?
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, that can push a great amount of bass out, especially for like a school dance or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've used that combination. It sounds really, really good. Kevin, how about you? What are you doing for speaker scene?
Speakers depends on the venue where I'm at. My equipment that I have right now is I have 4 12s, traditional box.
Okay.
I have 2 line arrays, and then I have 2 traditional 15 boxes, and then I have 2 subs 12s. I base what I bring based on the package I'm selling and what the room size is and what kind of music they want. If they ain't going to have some hard-hitting deeps, probably don't need the sub. There's some venues that they made me a preferred venue. One reason was because my line arrays, this lady likes the look of it. It's a smaller place. I can tuck it in tight beside my table, and I like the sound and the look of it anyways. So I tend to rock that a lot at the weddings. For the ceremony, it's usually, again, it depends. I might even rock that for the ceremony if I need my 15s for the venue, for the reception. Right. So it just sort of plays out differently. The 15s definitely get used at school gyms when I do the school events. The subs, I know from Ben Stowe to put my subs right in the middle and side by side. Don't put them on the stands, but I bought the stands, so sometimes it's like I feel like I should use the stands. I bought the stands. Let's get our benefit out of it. Yeah, and it does create uniformity that way. But that's what I use. I'm interested in possibly getting a battery powered system for my ceremony. When I tend to go to rehearsals, so my rehearsal speaker that I take is I'm in the Ryobi lineup. and I have a little Ryobi Bluetooth thing. I put the battery in it. It's the same one that runs your drills and, saws and everything else. And I can play their walk down the aisle, processional and recessional, gets the timing done. And I didn't have to carry much gear in just for that little part. So that's what I do right now.
Nice. You bring up an interesting point, because I think it was probably about 10 or 11 years ago that the issue of aesthetics started to kind of come up. I mean, 80s, 90s, you had big, carpet covered speakers that were heavy, were loud, did their job. You carried amps. And then late 90s, I went to powered speakers, and a lot of other people started coming over. But it seems like the early teens of this century, it was an aesthetics. Like, my 15-inch boxes look too big. And just like you, once I got a raise, it changed the game as far as people going, ooh, these are really, really sharp. John, you've been in the game a lot longer than most of us. You've really seen a progression from when you started to today. Where are you with speakers now, and what's your kind of thoughts on how we've changed in that arena?
Sure. I came from the days of amps and carpeted 200-pound 15s, big, massive things. But, I went into powered speakers reluctantly. So I always thought bigger was better. But then I started hearing, the original, 15 box top, so to speak, and they had decent sound. They got better over time. Most of what we run now is 12s on the top. If we're going out to do something large, a large room, say 150, 200 people, we bring the 18-inch sub and we put a 15 on top of it to really thump. But for most of the corporate work that we're doing, we find in hotels and function centers and banquet halls, 12-inch tops in the box style two-ways are a lot clearer and cleaner for the spoken word. They sound better because it's a tighter hit when you're trying to ring out the microphones and get rid of the feedback frequencies.
Yeah.
So we run the gamut. We've got 10s, 12s, 15s, and of course big subs depending on the nature of the event, how many people, where it's at. You want to have a clean look and a smaller profile, and you don't want to overkill. You don't want to bring more than you need, but you have to at least have a little headroom if you need to step on the gas if things get louder. You don't want to overdrive the system. You'd rather underrun a system than to try to push it too hard and make your sound compromised.
No, and I think this room's a good example of older DJs who have learned. In my career, no one's ever left at night and said, wow, we had so much fun. We danced. It was great. You just really weren't loud enough, because you've got to hold into account, in a corporate event where they're speaking. Yeah, you want everyone to clearly hear the voice. But in a wedding style event, even though you want everyone to hear cocktail, dinner, special dances, toasts, speeches, once dancing really starts, you've got a rather small area that you're filling. My dance floor last week was literally 20 by 20. I mean, that was it. It was not a big dance floor by any stretch. And that's all I had to fill. And then next to it was the whole reception of people that wanted to stay and talk. So, I think we've gotten smarter over time.
Well, like you say, too, you're not trying to blow them out. If you want a hot dance floor and the ability to have a normal tone conversation, 10 feet off your dance floor, so you don't have to make it quite the club environment like we used to think every party had to be.
Right. And you just reminded me of something I didn't ask Kevin or Ken. So I'll ask you, and I'll go back to Kevin and Ken just for a yes or no question. If you're running tops in a sub, do you run them during cocktail, dinner, speeches, special dances, or do you wait till you've got them on the dance floor and then start the sub?
Okay, I'll go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know I should have been clear about, I'll start with you on this and then I'll go back to them.
Normally, for the subs, if they're not directly chained, we'll run a separate line and just run it on booth out. Like, you don't need it for speeches. It just makes everything sound muddy. And when the dance floor starts kicking, then you just gradually bring it up enough to get that bottom end.
Yeah, okay. So before I go to Buddy, just real quick, Ken and Kevin. Ken, for you, if you're running a sub earlier in the night, do you have volume on the sub or do you wait till dancing?
I usually wait for dancing.
Okay. Same question to you, Kevin.
When I'm doing the sub setup, mine is set up that it goes into the sub and then it comes out, and it has a frequency that adjusts. It takes out the bass and puts it into the sub and then lets the rest go on up.
Oh, okay. So you're running it the whole
Oh,
time.
I'm always
Maybe just at lower volume.
Yeah.
Okay. Buddy, I know you are doing a lot of different events. I know a lot of weddings. I'll let you answer, even though I know what you're using. But if you could just maybe give a small explanation as to what made you go to that direction, that'd be great.
Well, considering that most of my time I used a two-way cabinet and subwoofers. Have two subwoofers, two-way cabinets, 15-inch tops, and the subs were unique dual 10 subs. But they're just big, heavy, big, huge 110-pound, wooden base sub, and then putting wooden cabinets up on sticks. It's just heavy. And one of the things I ran into about 12 years ago that made me fall in love with array systems is some of the ones that came out that were just only a few brands were out there. And I've seen and that's why I was an early adopter of it, but I've seen the evolution of them where they are today, where they do all this stuff. They have like mini mixers built into them and so forth and so on. And I really want more into arrays in basically 2018. And I look at my look then, and nothing against scrims. I had scrims, speakers on stands, nice look, uplit, very beautiful with the white or the black scrim. But I feel the array gives a more sleek look to it, especially now with some of the lighting options that are out there. And I really feel that how arrays, and again, what made me fall in love with array was the first one I bought to do ceremonies with, and I still use that unit today to do ceremonies, is how it fills with sound, but it doesn't feel like in your face. A two-way cabinet is kind of more directional. It has a very narrow cone versus an array has a much wider cone and it has more of a filling effect. Now, the downside, can you throw it really far? No. But I've done weddings with two arrays, 260 people in a large room, and not have a worry about it. And I got video. I've seen it. I've showed it to clients that are on the dance floor. The cameras on the dance floor, they're probably 40 feet away from the arrays, and you hear them, but they're not overly powerful. They're not hitting someone. And that's one thing I like about arrays is that someone can have a conversation in the room, but yet have a hot dance floor and have that nice energy in a dance floor, but you're still not making grandma's ears bleed and making her want to leave the room. Right. That's another reason why I love them. They're just they're just so versatile of a tool. But again, two-way cabinets to the sub, like what John said, running the subs out of your booth out, that's what I used to do with my subs all the time. And run that separately so I can control it and then turn down the subs when it's dinner time. Even though with the arrays, I'll turn the bass down, I'll kick the bass down on them during dinner, just so they don't have that booming low end, but have that nice, pleasant sound for music. And again, I would keep it light a little bit because people are having conversations.
So I'm curious because John said it and you said it, and I know people do this, but I've never tried it. I was kind of taught, and I think Kevin said it, you go into your sub and out to your tops.
Yeah.
And I know on the road, we have DJs that automatically hook up tops and then go out to the sub. And we have me and other DJs that start at the sub, then climb up. And I mean, I've heard from sound experts, you can go either way. But if you're doing booth out for your sub, are you running the speakers full range then? Or are you running them in like a sub mode?
No,
most speakers will have a flip.
Full range. And running basically directly from the mixer, direct line out to the speakers. So Each speaker has its own, left or right. And then out of the booth out into the sub. Or
you running both sides? So you're running both sides of the booth out
into one sub, or if there have two subs, because usually subs have left and right input, running left and one and right into the other. But running the top speakers at full range. That way, again, during dinner you still have some bass, and you turn the subs off. But when you turn it back on, that for the dance floor, and you have that energy, you get a little more bass from the top, a little more like a mid-range bass.
Right.
Because they're higher up off the ground, so you're not getting rumbly bass. But then with the subs, they have that nice roll of bass too. I've always heard that. I've always loved the sound of that. And again, it's one of the things that I've tested it, looked at, walked out on the floor many a times, and I never had a bad time with that. And again, I always liked it that I could control the bass. So if something comes up like shut up and dance, when that bass part comes to kick, you can kick the bass up a little bit more, turn the volume a little more in the subs, so you get a little more bass hit. And then when you shut up and dance, turn it back down to normal, you still have the nice rhythm, but you have that nice energy going on when people are like kind of jumping down, having that feel.
Right. John, same thing for you as far as the way.
Yeah, if you know going in, it's going to be dance music, like you're going into a bar or a venue, and it's just going to be constant. You can run to the bass, and some of them have electronic crossovers. You can say the cutoff's 100 hertz or whatever, and then you send the rest up to the high end, whether it's a 12 or a 15 box, whatever you have. But for weddings where it's kind of stop and go, you're not just constantly barraging them with music. I find the booth out gives you a little more control. Some songs are bass heavy and you wish you could turn just the bass down. You like where the volume's at, but some songs are just hitting a little too hard and you can only EQ so much. Now you've got a way to back it off a little bit. And you have a little more independent control of each of your frequencies, and you just kind of make them, balance them out so that they don't sound distorted.
Right. Yeah, I've heard it from a few different DJs, and it's rather in the I'll say in like the last 5-6 years, because I didn't even own a sub till 5 or 6. It's actually been 10 years. I got my first sub, and I'll just say it was a 12-inch sub, and I was running two-way 15-inch tops, and I got the 12-inch sub A because I got a great deal in it, but B because I didn't want to move air. I just wanted to impact the low end, and I have to tell you, it totally changed the sound. Even though the sub was smaller than the tops, people commented like, wow, what a full sound. It wasn't pushing air and it wasn't pounding anyone's chest, but I wasn't doing those type of events. So it made sense to, everyone's new car has a great system in it. It's not like my day where it's like, if you wanted that system, you had to put it in. Now they're all coming with subs in them. So I wanted to compete on that level, and I found a 12 really did help. Yeah,
even if you hide it under the table, like you say,
that's what I did.
So no one knew it was there. Yeah, it just fills in the full spectrum of sound. It sounds better.
Oh, when I went to 10-inch tops and a single 15 under the table, and I ran it the whole system, but I kept the sub physically volume down until dancing. And it would blow people's minds because they just see these tiny little 10-inch boxes. And then you've got, 120 people jamming to something bass heavy. And in hindsight, it would have been great if I'd hooked it up to the booth out where I could have been like, oh, on this particular section of Bust a Move, or, this is how we do it or something. I'm just going to blast them with bass and then bring it back down. So I think I'm going to try that. I've got a couple events coming up where subs will be used. I think I want to try that. And just
I've always liked doing that, Jay. I've always liked
like I said, buddy, I heard about it. I just didn't know it was possible because I always thought the frequencies would get messed up. And then I realized no, you just run the tops at full range because you can't tell the tops only a lot of. And it's funny now with DSP, it changes everything. You can do no sub, you can do 80, 100, 120, but a lot of older speakers, it's. You can't even really tell. Some of them you can't say anything. Some of them just don't have that option of, I might be using a crossover with this. It's like the crossover is in the sub. So you're setting the sub to run to the tops. Now you've got tops that you can dial with or without a sub, where the cuts are. So, it's certainly giving us a lot more latitude, but I love the idea of running it with that booth out, It's definitely something I'm going to look at.
And it's one of the things I would say for anyone, if you're doing that kind of system, listen to it and hear it and make sure it makes sense to you. And don't set it up, go out there, go on the dance floor, listen to it for the room. If you don't feel it's right, go back to the original one. I would always say, do what you feel is best for you, but try it. It's trust me, Jay, it's kind 100%. Of a little bit of a game changer, and I love doing that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's, that's the beauty of what we do. I think every year I can point to one or two things that may not be major, but are big enough improvements on what I do because of something I learned. So it's never just consistent. And it can be little stuff. It can be everything from a lighting change to a speaker change to a placement change. There's always something you're going to learn that then changes the trajectory of the rest of the year or even the next year. So yeah, this is definitely going to be another tool I put in the tool bag. Eric, what are you doing when it comes to different setups on speakers, and what's your usual go-to as far as, is it an array? Is it boxes, sub, no sub? What are you doing up there in New Hampshire?
Well, I use both. I use arrays and I use boxes, powered boxes. And Again, it depends on the venue, the amount of people.
Right.
The arrays, which is Buddy brought up, they're great. They're hot on the dance floor, you know?
Yep.
And then some venues, they're long, or so you want to shoot sound back there too, but you don't want to kill them. So there have been some occasions where I would use the arrays and loop out to my boxes on stands.
Yeah.
And it's great because the beauty of powered speakers is you get that little volume on the back to where you can control what's coming out back there.
100%.
So it's not really loud back there, but they can hear what's going on, and it's hot on the floor. Do you want to do that every time? No. Like I said, it depends on where you're at, you know. I do not use subwoofers. I've had many of them, and I like you, Jay. I threw it under the table, and every time I had an MC, I'd get feedback from that sub, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't care what I did, you know, I could never get rid of that feedback every time I had an MC with that sub right underneath me.
That's a point I hadn't even considered, but yeah. And, you know, I find with the arrays, even at big volume, you can kind of almost stand directly in front of them.
That's what's great about
rarely
it.
ever feedback.
I don't use subs anymore. I've got a few of them here of the same brand of the tops that I have that I use. And I would never put them under the table. I would put them over by, you know, side to side, you know, because of the feedback. I would have loved to hit them those subs to make. And then I stopped using the subs with the tops I had, and people were still asking me, and I do believe John was one of them, asking me, where you hiding your sub? He came to one of my shows. And I said, John, I don't have a sub. And he was amazed. I'm like, I don't need it with this.
Yeah.
We're not bringing up, you know, brands or anything. I'm just saying you can get away without a sub if
you tune them. I mean, you know, a lot of us have the same setups. You go on the app and you go the difference between live music, club, and speech. It's dramatic.
Yes.
Like if you need to get a little pump going, you just simply take out the phone and click something, you know, and even the sub placement, you know, I spoke with someone last week and they were explaining to me, and I don't think it was Brian in here, but it was, I think, Pulse outside of here. Yeah, it was Pulse. When he was using subs, and he still does occasionally, he would take the setup and go out on the dance floor and find out where the best sound was and then move the sub around to change its placement. So, you know, at this wedding, the sub might be dead center, but the next wedding, the sub might be 5 feet off his right speaker. And I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, because you want to get the best sound for sub on the dance floor and then place it there. Yeah, I'm not the tech guy, so I couldn't really follow.
The science said the length of the room, the height of the ceiling. There's a lot of factors that are going to change.
The thing you got to factor in though is once that room is full, that's going to change.
That's change all the. Yeah, I had a buddy that used to use the dual 10-inch sub, and he would always have a wall behind him. And the way he used it, he had the boxes up on stands. He used 12s. And then the dual 10-inch sub, he placed it sideways on the wall behind him. And I'm like, is that doing anything? He's like, bass is, you know, it's omnidirectional. It's going everywhere anyway. This is just this is allowing it to bounce off of here and there. And I think I told you guys when I was in Dallas once, they were using the same system I owned, but what they had done is put they were using 10s and a 15 sub. Well, the 15 sub was on the physical floor. They were on a stage 4 feet higher. Then they had the 10s on speaker stands, so they were another 6 feet up. So the tops were 10 feet above the sub and probably 10 feet off to the side of it. I walked in, I didn't recognize the sound. It sounded amazing. I'm like, well, you know, what system are you using? And they told me, I'm like, I have that system. Mine doesn't sound anything like this. And then when I looked at the configuration, I realized, oh, this particular setup is really promoting the sound. I mean, we've all done rooms where speakers are 20, 30 feet apart from each other, and it sounds amazing. The room just lights up. So I think a lot of the placement is where, you got to experiment. But if you're like me, you get a 6-foot table or section, and the speakers are right next to you, so you don't have to worry about them getting knocked over or anyone bouncing into them. And the sub under the table is the easiest spot. I'm alone at my gigs, just like most of you. I'm not going to run around a room and try to figure out, oh, this sounds better over here, but I can't watch it during the performance. So it's interesting how much we've changed. The other thing that I wanted to just go around the room, a little bit quicker question, is when do you decide to upgrade speakers? I had gotten 2 speakers in 2002, and one of them blew the woofer in 2010. And I felt, because I was using them about 80 to 90 gigs a year, turned to 10 year round, and they were flawless. And the first hiccup, I bought them off a guy that quit DJing after 6 months, and I think I paid $300 for the pair, and I got 8 years out of them. Probably 500, 600 events. And it was at that time I just said, you know what? This is like changing headlights. The right one goes, change both. Because if the right one's gone today, maybe the left one goes in a couple weeks. So that's when I replaced them with 2 15-inch tops. I used those for another 7 years before I got another set of speakers through work. But how, is Ken still with us, or did Ken bounce?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Ken, just a quick answer to how long do you have speakers before you consider upgrading? Or do you just run them till they die and then replace them?
Yeah, they're done.
Okay. Kevin, what about you? I know you've got several different types of speakers, but what keeps a speaker in rotation, and what brings a new one in?
Basically, if it looks good, it still sounds good, I'll run with it. Now, what I'm looking for right now, and I thought I'd talk to you guys after the event, is my SPL is spread out between 127, 121, and 119. So I would like to get a higher up one, because right now I'm the regular DJ at a 4th of July in the town. So I'm set up outside, and I need to be able to produce as much sound as I can with probably getting maybe a couple more speakers, if that's appropriate. So I'm looking to add, or I'm looking to fill in gaps, like I said earlier, battery. Also, back to the other thing, some of my equipment is based on heft and fitting in my SUV. Yeah. So that's one of the,
that's always a condition.
That's why I like the arrays. I can actually do some events, if they're smaller packages, I can actually put everything in my full-size car, not take the SUV that gets like in the teens for mileage. I can get a car that makes 20. So,
by the way, before I go to John, just as a side, I had to get a convertible back in 2000. So I did. I bought a Chrysler Sebring convertible. I gigged out of that car doing probably 60 to 70 gigs a year for 5 years before I got a minivan. So I would have to put the top down, put 2 15-inch powered speakers in the back seat, my coffin, 2 speaker stands. Then the trunk was CDs, lights, shirt and tie. My cart went in the front seat, and then cable bags went between the front seat, the back seat, and the trunk. And it was a pain, but I wanted the convertible more than I wanted a big truck where I could have gotten subs and all that. So a lot of my decisions have been same with you, Kevin. I didn't have a van. And then once I did get a van, I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I can get whatever I want. And then my brain said, and you can spend the money and carry it all too. Yeah. So, John, getting to you, what's the determining factor on the upgrade? Do you get in front of it before you need to get them? Or do you just, is something great got to come along before it makes you pull out the...
if you see a good deal on something that's too good to pass up, you get that, and that just lays in wait until something goes wrong with your primary gear. I guess if you take care of your stuff, it should last, but wear and tear, the sockets are a little wiggly, or you got to pull the wire a little bit this way to keep the sound on. Like, those are just telltale signs. need the time to do the repair or replacement, depending how old your stuff is. Then it's probably time to upgrade. And if one's doing it, replace both, like you said with the headlight.
Yeah, I just found that to be like the headlight issue or windshield wipers or whatever. Buddy, what's I know you got into arrays pretty heavily. Is it a waiting for the next big thing to come along, or just monitoring the success of the ones you presently own before you make a decision to get new ones?
Well, the big thing is that seeing what the manufacturers are doing, looking at what they come out in their generation. Is there an evolution or it's a revolution between each generation? What are they adding to it? What's the difference in sound, SPL, so forth, so on? And the big thing I look at always is what condition the gear is in. Is it in good condition? Having covers and stuff like that, taking care of your gear. You take care of your gear will take care of you. And having that professional, you got dents in your grills, you have scratches in the side. Yeah, you can use some markers to cover some scratches. Scratches will happen here and there. Replacing the grill is always important, but you want to look at, is your equipment looking good? Is it in good order? If it's not in good order, definitely you need to replace it. But if it's working okay and you can wait until that next generation item comes along, then wait. But usually I try to look at equipment replacement about every 5 to 7 years, depending on what it is. So like my arrays were from 2018, of course, 2020, nothing happened really much there. But if you go 2018, 2019, 2021, 22, 23, 24, it's starting to get up there in age, and I'm waiting to see what the manufacturers are coming out next. And again, NAM and every other manufacturer that's out, NAM's a big one, but every manufacturer out there, they're always releasing new stuff. And that's the great thing about it. If you're looking for great new stuff, you're looking for something, look at those shows, look what they have coming out, and read things, read about the products, read what technology they include, and see there's apps involved in it. What can you do, and what is the difference between what you have now to the next step, next evolution you do in your speakers?
Yeah, 100%. That's a great thought, especially including NAMM and other shows where manufacturers speaking from first person. You want to bring the new stuff out, and you've got a 12-month cycle. And ultimately you're in a tax year. You want to spend some money or save it. You want to pay taxes on it or buy gear. You want write-offs or not. So I think the sweet spots are January, usually pre-summer a little bit, and then post. So you got kind of those 3 times a year that you can kind of look around and go, hey, it's March, April. Somebody just released something for the next season. And then the season winds down at the end of August, September. Now shopping time, boom, something new came along. So,
and that's one of the things also is you brought up taxes real quickly. I'm not a tax professional. I don't play one on TV. I don't recommend listen to everything I say for taxes. Talk to your tax professional, but write down, or you basically take the cost of the unit by 5 years. That's usually how long you can write it off for on your taxes on items. So I would definitely look at, okay, at least have the speaker for 5 years and then see where you go from there too. And that's another thing that could be a judge for you. If you want that write-off, you're at the end of 5 years with that speaker, you could get new speakers and keep those speakers as a secondary backup pair for what happens. I still
100%.
have my tops and I still have my tops. I got rid of my subwoofers, but I still have my tops sitting in storage. So if something happened to my arrays, and I have a couple sets of arrays, if something happened and I needed to use a 2-way top, I still have 2-way tops available to me that they're retired. They're still in good condition, everything like that.
Right.
But I still have them there. And that's one of the things also is that it's not a bad thing having some extra gear, because you never know. You run to that gig that, oh man, if I had an extra set of speakers for this extra area, would helped out.
100%. I used 14-year-old 2-way 15s that before they left my house, they were so new in 2010 that no one had bags. So I had to order custom bags from a company called Tukey, and they're zip top bags. And I had those speakers out 3 weeks ago at a gig, and someone said, "Oh, these are cool speakers, man. They're kind of big." I'm like, "Yeah, they're 15s." Like, "Did you just get them?" I'm like, No. They've been around a couple of gigs. Because they look brand new. There's not a mark on them. I said they go from the bag to the stand. The bag comes off. Then at the end of the night, I use telescoping. And that's a side thing, but I think they're maybe $200 a stand. The stands I use, I got in 1996. And they are 100% working today. And they have a telescoping mechanism that allows them to come down slowly and lock. End of the night, I pull the speakers down. the bags go on them. So when I take them off the stand, they're already in a bag. And I think that's essential to get good life out of them. You can't just beat them up and expect them, because they could be 3 years old and look beat up. It's not going to help. Eric, what's your determining factor on moving forward with new speakers?
Well, Buddy kind of stole part of my answer. I had 5 years.
Buddy said that you could, and I mean, again, this Buddy is not a tax attorney, but apparently TBM Production says you can write off the full price of a speaker for 5 years in a row. So $1,000 speaker, you could write off $5,000. I'm going to do that next year.
My
really
5 years.
What? No? Okay.
No, when I say 5 years, I wasn't thinking tax purposes, but I think 5 years is a good enough time span if you got a decent product, it's going to be fine. And even if you get like the extended warranty on these, isn't it usually like 5 years?
A lot of speaker companies have gone to 6 and 7 years now, just because they find that, like Buddy said, and with me, I mean, the speakers I used 2 weeks ago are 14 years old.
Yeah.
I take good care of them. I don't abuse them. I don't flip them. They're not running, crazy. So they tend, I think if they're doing their job consistently, if you don't hear any change in sound, if you keep the screws tight, they're probably going to be fine. But again, I'm not telling you keep your speakers for 14 years.
Right. And see, my wife is all about keeping up with the Jones. So she's constantly on, I'm not going to name the sites, but look at this, Eric, look at that. We should get, I'm like, calm down. We need to eat.
Yeah. Like, spend money.
A lot of people want, I know a lot of DJs that will upgrade speakers as new things come out, even if their speakers are 2 or 3 years old. And I can't say they're wrong, but I think when you're doing enough gigs, you find what works really well and you just keep running it. And I don't think you run it into the ground like an old car.
Right.
But you know what? They still sound as good as they used to. It's sort of like a microphone. I've got a 22-year-old SM58 and I have a 2-year-old SM58. If I was blindfolded and you handed me the two mics, I couldn't tell you which was which.
Yeah.
And I only bought the new one because I'm like, what if the old one doesn't sound right? When I A-B'd them, I'm like, I can't tell.
I've always been that guy. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, and unless and the array's the kind of technology that took us by surprise. First time I saw it, probably 15 years ago, at a DJ show. It was a very small, little 4-inch tops and a small bottom, and it was one of those things where I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get those. Those look good, but it wasn't up for debate because they weren't priced at a point that made sense. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, so I'm with you on that.
That's why, Jay, you got to justify your purchase and what you spend on something. You need to have that business in there to justify that need, that I'm spending X amount of dollars on this item. Do I need it? And you got to make sure that you spend the money, you get your money back on it. And that's the other thing. Also, again, speakers, you can never go wrong by buying good quality speakers. And we happen to have there happen to have people out there that will help you and help you make smart decisions on what you need for speakers. So ask 100%. Questions.
But I did a real quick, not to derail this, and then we'll get going. I did a show in Guitar Center on Saturday. They were doing a grand reopening of it's pretty much their corporate store because it's about a half mile from their headquarters for the company. And we got into this talk about speakers, which kind of inspired tonight's topic. And I said, I still maintain if you put up a black sheer curtain in front of the speaker wall, and when someone came in and said, yeah, I'm looking for speakers, do you want 10, 12, or 15? Well, I've been using 15s. I think they're too big. So, I think 12s. Okay, great. Let me show you the 4 I have. You play the exact song out of all 4. And I think you'd be surprised because somebody might come in and say, I don't like brand A or B. But yet when they hear them for their own ears, they may find that brands A and B are what they really enjoyed. But so much of our purchasing is done by ads, word of mouth, or the newest hot thing on the street, or whatever the case might be. But I really think Buddy's right when, in saying you've got to really maintain, get the best thing you can that you can afford to get. Don't overextend yourself. But understand you're going to be picking these things up once to get them into the card for the gig, once into the gig, once back to the car, once back to the garage or storage. That's 4 times. If you pick up a 100-pound speaker, 400 pounds a gig, and you're gigging 2 or 3 times a week, that's thousands of pounds you're moving. So understand, the weight, what's it made of, the appearance, the name of it. There's a lot of factors, but just do your due diligence and go to places like this, DJNTV, where you're going to get the newest information on what we as professional DJs do. So I want to thank everyone for coming in tonight. That's going to do it for us. We are going to look forward to working with our Howie man next week when we shoot the next one of these. We do them every Monday. I know they get released on different days, but I want to thank all of you for tuning in. Please, down at the bottom, check not only links for our sponsors, but also comments or maybe future shows that you'd like us to do. We'd be happy to read them, and we do. So to all of you, stay well, have great gigs. To everyone in the room, cheers. Thank you so much, everybody. And we are going to call that a wrap.